My name is Bradley Flowers, and I will be discussing the languages of pre-modern East Asia, which both contribute to and can be used to disprove the myth of homogeneity. So starting off with some general background information, the languages of East Asian countries, including China, Japan, and Korea, are unrelated to each other. In fact, Chinese is an isolating language, meaning it has no conjugations, while both Japanese and Korean are agglutinative, so they have conjugations. And most cultures of pre-modern East Asia relied on classical/literary Chinese for official and serious writings, but none of them spoke it. And it's probably this common use of classical Chinese, as well as the similar symbolic characters of the written languages, that gave rise to the idea that all of East Asia speaks and writes one language, or that they're mutually intelligible. Looking at speech and spoken language, the people of pre-modern East Asia spoke a wide variety of languages, even within each of the countries. For example, those in Chinese regions mostly spoke languages belonging to the Sino-Tibetan language family, while those in Japanese regions spoke Japonic languages, and those in Korean regions spoke Koreanic languages. And interestingly, both of those families are sometimes categorized under the Altaic language family alongside Mongolian and Turkish. And all of these language families were comprised of variations of similar languages that shared common roots, as far as we can tell. And they were all spoken by the different ethnic groups in the regions, which likely shared common ancestry to go along with those common roots of languages. So this map shows the different language families throughout Eurasia. And of particular note are those of China, Japan, and Korea, which you can see there's a bunch of different colors showing how their languages are from different families. Right, now looking at the writing, this is where you can really see the heterogeneity as opposed to the supposed homogeneity of the East Asian cultures in pre-modern times. So while all of the East Asian countries belonging to the Sinographic sphere wrote in classical Chinese, both Japan and Korea created their own variations of it. For example, Japan created Manyogana to write Japanese language using Chinese characters, or kanji, to represent sounds, which they later simplified with cursive to hiragana and abbreviated to katakana. And they used kanji for content words, hiragana for inflections and grammatical particles, and katakana for foreign words. And meanwhile, Korea created Hangul, or Chosunggul, to write Korean in a way that all Koreans could read and understand. And originally, both of these countries translated everything into Chinese before they wrote it. So these new variations definitely helped them. And then as time went on, classical Chinese eventually kind of died out, while the languages of all the different East Asian countries continued evolving and just became more distinct from one another. Here are some visual examples of the different writing systems of pre-modern East Asia. So in the top left, figure 2, we just have classical Chinese. Then below it, we have on the left, katakana with the red editions, I believe, representing the Manyogana. And then to the right of that, we have hiragana and just how it's simplified from Manyogana. And then in figure 4, just the top right, we have some examples of Hangul. And while they all look somewhat similar, you can still see the difference between them all.
For this part, I'm going to talk about political and government system between three countries, which is China, Japan, and Korea. First country I'm going to talk about is China. China has a most complex and unique government system than other two countries. Ancient China political system was categorized by a centralized form of governance, typically ruled by an emperor, also called a king. Officials were managed according to a hierarchical systems. The system is well structured, and officers were selected by very hard exams called emperor exam. Through the exams, they select the talents and use it to serve the emperor, which also related to the society, because if you pass the exams and get into the governments, your social level will increase and having a bright future at that time. So for that time, ordinary people pass the exams, get a job inside of governments is the only way to change their life. So the second country I'm going to talk about is Japan. For a period of time, Japan's political system have the same structure like Asian China. It's all about central politics, central polarization, ordered by one man. That is the emperor of Japan. But in fact, the power was held by samurai classes, the samurai order, from a special culture of samurai and Bushido spirits. Unlike the myths that talk about the Asian Japan governments, samurai classes is also not the real owner of Japan or for all the time. Just like the emperor, the 10-0 is a symbol. Like samurai is also a symbol for the Japan governments at the time. And also we can see that the society is quite similar to the Asian China. Farmers, royal families, businessmen, and Buddhism all exist in Japan society structures. So the third country I'm going to talk about is Korea. Both Korea and Japan have the same system of governments, just like Asian China. But after the time goes past and the periods change, Korea's government system continue to change and even switching powers from the royalty to those big families. Unlike the myth says, Korea is always being controlled by a royal or emperor. Korea, when the period is switching, the Korea started to control by those powerful family instead of a royal family, which also caused the royal family losing their power when the period time has changed.
Hi, my name is Haley Connor, and I'm going to be talking about the different ethnic groups within traditional China and Japan. So these are the ethnic groups of China, and of course, first we have the Han people, their largest ethnic group, making up 92% of China's population, 19% of the whole world's population, and have one of the longest written histories dating back to 1000 BC. Then we have the Zhuang, which is the second largest ethnic group. They're located in southern China and famous for their terraced rice fields and the beautiful terrain of the area, and have their own distinct language. Then next we have the Mongols, who are famously known for establishing one of the largest empires in history, which was led by Genghis Khan. They also have a large population in Mongolia, of course, and they still hold a lot of their older traditions of horseback riding, combat, and living in huts in the grasslands. And then we have the Manchu, who defeated the Ming Dynasty, established the Qing Dynasty, and they live in the cold northeast. They're well known for their unique hairstyles, which were popular during the Qing Dynasty when they ruled. And then we have the Tibetans, also known for their large empire, helped invite Buddhism into China, and monasteries are a very important part of their culture as religion is still today. And then we have the Uyghurs, which is a predominantly Muslim group. They live in the northwest and speak a unique Turkic language. So for the ethnic groups of Japan, first we have the Yamato people. They're the predominant ethnic group in Japan, make up a vast majority of the population. And there's a bit of a misconception and myth around the Yamato people being the sole people who are native Japanese, which is not true. We have the Ainu. They're native to the Hokkaido region. They have their own unique language and hold animistic beliefs, which are religious beliefs that all of the earth around them, such as rocks, trees, animals, have a soul and a consciousness. Then we have the Obeke. They're native to the Bonin Islands. They speak predominantly English. Sadly, after World War II, only about 200 remain in Japan. And then we have the Ryukyuans. They're native to the Ryukyu Islands. There's many different subgroups within the ethnic group, and their society is unique in that they have some distinct matriarchal elements.
Today, I want to talk about traditional architecture in East Asia. The myth of homogeneity in traditional East Asia is incorrect. I want to touch on China first because it influences the other countries. However, the other countries such as Korea and Japan express different ideas and use different patterns and styles to reflect their cultures. Traditional Chinese buildings generally have an even number of columns which lead to an odd number of bays, as we can see in this photograph of the Forbidden City in Beijing, China. This happens so when you put a main door in, you have symmetry on both sides. Wood, stone, and clay tiles are mainly used in Chinese architecture. All are simple materials that can be gathered or made easily. This also helps with rebuilding a house because of nature or modifications to them. China does many things to protect from nature. The slanted shape of their roofs not only have a beautiful style, but also helps protect from snow and water buildup. The simple materials and the advanced building technique of interlocking beams cut to precise measurements allow the building to move and shift slightly and still be able to distribute its weight evenly. For patterns, they generally use green, red, white, gray, and black colors. Those colors symbolize the elements around them. There are many various patterns in art on buildings that also symbolize cosmological, mythological, and as well as other general symbolic elements. Next, I want to look at Korea. Korea shares a border with China, which makes it easy for cultures to collide and be mixed. That doesn't mean these cultures are homogeneous, and we can clearly see a distinct Korean style in this building. The roof on this building has a less aggressive slant and curves up more in the end than the Chinese style. Its roof is not as tall, which gives the building a slightly smaller feel. The materials used in traditional Korean architecture were mostly stone, wood, and clay tiles. These materials were abundant in their land and were easy to gather, making them the perfect building materials. The clay tiles in traditional Korean architecture were very masterfully planted with a wide variety of designs that I will touch on in a second. First, I want to talk about natural protection. Just like China and Japan, Korea gets hit with earthquakes. The easily gathered materials used helped with repairing damages. They also used a similar build technique to the Chinese, which helped protect them. The patterns and colors of the buildings in traditional Korea were mostly blue, white, red, black, yellow, and green. Yes, those are most of the same colors that China uses, but on this particular one, we can see more green and white than the Chinese building, so although similar, they have their own distinct style. Last, but certainly not least, we have Japan. The most beautiful of the three in my opinion, but it may just be this picture. Japan's style is more unique and more connected to nature than the others. They don't always paint the walls in order to show the natural beauty of the wood itself. The sliding doors they have also differ from Chinese and Korean buildings. The more elongated and less slanted roofs help protect windows from summer rains. Like I said, the material used in traditional Japanese houses was wood. Almost all of the house was made from it. The wood regulated the temperature and ventilated the building throughout the 4 seasons. It was also very easy to gather, which was a huge plus. The Japanese made the parts of their houses like puzzle pieces that fit loosely together while still maintaining proper weight distribution, allowing the buildings to be earthquake resistant. In taller buildings like a pagoda, you would have a dampening system, which was a large wooden column within a shaft in the middle of the building that acts like a shock absorber and alleviates the earthquake damage. The traditional Japanese patterns were not as prominent on the outside of buildings as in Korea and China, as the walls were sometimes not even painted. More of earth tones and the greens and the browns, and maybe some dark reds were most prominent.
Hi, my name is Naila Dennis, and today I will be talking about the many religions that are practiced in East Asia, while also debunking many myths of homogeneity in traditional East Asia. Some mentions that we did not learn about in class will be mentions of the Philippines as well as animism. The first big 3 religions of East Asia that I will be discussing are Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. Buddhism centers around the belief that the human life is a cycle of suffering due to our innate worldly attachment, and in order to achieve full happiness, or nirvana, one must detach themselves from desire. Confucianism promoted the ideology of the fundamental core of virtue, which is kindness towards others. There are many misconceptions and stigmas towards Confucianism, and how it is mainly about respecting one's elders. In contrary, Confucianism also has a high stand on moral compass, as well as heaven and the divine, and has a large impact on China's government and society. Taoism is a religion's strongest promotion of modesty. The Tao is believed to be the center of the universe, promoting the importance of aligning oneself with the universe and finding the Tao. Yin and Yang generates from Taoism and is a large representation of the beliefs in which are rooted in Taoism. All 3 of these religions are in a lot of Western media as well. There is strong miscommunication that these are the only religions in East Asia and that everyone is either one of the 3. These religions are also strongly practiced outside of East Asia, especially in India, and even has been altered through time in different regions. The next religion I will be discussing is folk Christianity. Opposed to popular belief, folk Christianity or Catholicism is a practiced religion in East Asia, mainly by the Philippines. Although that we have not really dove into Filipino culture and religion, it's important to debunk the belief that East Asia is only filled with religious practices such as Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. Due to colonization, the Philippines now is one of the only East Asian countries that practices Christianity or folk Christianity. However, there's a large sum of people in Japan who were hunted and crucified for being Christian during the Edo period. There's still about 1% of people who practice it, and it is important to debunk the belief that there are no Christians in East Asia. The next religion I will be talking about is Shintoism, and Shintoism is less of a singular belief system, but more of a mix of Asian beliefs as well as rituals. It is predominantly practiced in Japan and also stands as one of the oldest religious forms in Japan. Shintoism does not focus on a singular god, but rather the kami, or the divine presence. There are many rituals that include shrines of various shapes and sizes, which are usually of a historical figure, topographical feature, or god from Shinto writings. There is also a large influence of Shintoism in Japan's government and politics as well. Although Shinto is not celebrated in all of East Asia, it still holds significance and is important, especially to Japanese culture and society. The last religion I will be discussing is Islam. Islam is a monotheistic religion that is practiced in various East Asian countries, mainly in China and partially in Japan. The religion originated in Southeast Asia, of course, but it had migrated throughout the years to various parts of the world, including East Asia. It is a very common misconception that East Asia does not partake in this religion or that it is only Southeast Asian, which is not true. The belief system roots around the worship of Allah and also a mix of religions due to the time and area in which it was developed. It is the second largest religion in the world and has many written texts that are used and practiced to this day. Islam is also heavily influenced by animism, much like Shinto, which is a large part of many East Asian religions.